My name's Pete Woods. You're watching Hexhamtv. Who are you?
My name's Sharon Brown, and I'm the CEO of Northumberland Domestic Abuse Services.
So Sharon, tell me a little bit about the service.
So this is actually our 20th anniversary week. Northumberland Domestic Abuse Service was originally set up as 60-80-30 by a group of local women in Hexham who obviously identified that there were women affected by domestic abuse, but actually they weren't able to access the support that they needed. And from then, in around 2015, it became Northumberland Domestic Abuse Service because the service had expanded to cover the whole of the county. And the service that we operate goes from somebody being able to call because they're experiencing domestic abuse, and quite often people are confused about whether they're experiencing domestic abuse, so it takes a lot to make the first call. But our staff who answer the phone are very sensitive and can ask questions which are very difficult to answer, but create a level of trust so that people are able to access the support that they need. And from that initial conversation, which will include doing a risk assessment, because one of the first things that we have to do is to assess whether somebody's safe. And then we start building a kind of individual plan for them. And they will be referred on to one of our domestic abuse practitioners. So we have 3 covering the whole of the county. The county is twice the size of Luxembourg, with half the population, and it's largely rural. So covering the county is one of our biggest challenges. We are constantly having to go into communities to make sure they've got the information over and over again, because people change, leaflets and posters are moved. So that's something that we do all of the time. So as well as our domestic abuse practitioners, we also run domestic abuse programs. So one of the things is that quite often people don't recognize that they're actually experiencing domestic abuse. So I think traditionally people think if you're not being battered, it's not domestic abuse. But we now recognize, and legislation accepts that coercive and controlling behavior is all part of that. And I think people are so used to living in circumstances where somebody else is controlling everything, including their finances, where they go, who they see, that they kind of take it for granted. So educating people about that is a big part of what we do as well. And I think a lot of the people that we work with, when they listen to other people's experiences, you can see the penny drop for them. And they go, oh yeah, I am experiencing domestic abuse. That is what happened to me as well. So we run those programs, and actually we've got a huge demand for those programs. We're also working with the children and young people of our clients. And under the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, children and young people are now recognised as victims in their own right. So that's a really important piece of work for us. So we offer counselling, but we also offer more informal interventions with individuals and with sibling groups. The other part of what we do is trying to block people from becoming abusers in the future or becoming victims in the future. So we do a lot of prevention work going into schools across the county and speaking to groups of children and young people from primary through to sixth formers about relationships, about what healthy relationships and safe relationships look like, about barriers, about when to say no. So that's a big part of what we do. And one of the things I'm hoping is that the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, Nicole Jacobs, looks at embedding that kind of work across the national curriculum, because at the minute, it's only a tiny proportion of children and young people that will get that kind of information, but it really needs to be embedded. So I'm just trying to think. I don't think I've missed anybody out. So that is our work, in a nutshell. But there's also a lot about looking at the gaps and looking at the barriers, looking at who we're not reaching. So one of the things we're hoping to work on is working with 60 plus people who are affected by domestic abuse. We know from some research by Dr. Hannah Bowes at Durham University, her research suggests that our numbers would double. So we worked with over 400 last year, so we'll be looking at 800. So we're hoping that work is going to be happening this year, and we'll be doing a lot of work to network and to target older people so they've got the information.
And it's important to say that relationships, are very different to very different people. So it's not just if you're in a man and wife situation or a boyfriend and girlfriend. It's if you're in a same-sex relationship or any sort of relationship where you think you're being abused. Or coerced in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not necessarily single sex. It's also not necessarily from partners, because domestic abuse is also between familial partner people, so people within the same family unit. And, in some households that's not necessarily people who are directly related as well. So it's actually very wide and huge. And one of the things that we want to do as well is really make sure that all groups of society, particularly underrepresented groups, know that our service is available for them. So I was just speaking to somebody who works with the LGBTQI community. And, it is about building those links and getting out and speaking to people and making it known that actually we are available for everyone as well. And, as you say, talking about all of the different types of domestic abuse and the different situations that it might occur in as well.
And anyone who feels that they're in any immediate danger should obviously
call the police.
Call the police, call 999.
Yep.
And if it's at all possible to get away from that immediate danger, if it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody who calls us and they are in immediate danger, then we say straight away, put the phone down and call the police, and then you can get back to us after that. But immediately they need to get the police there.
And your service is completely confidential?
Absolutely. It's totally confidential. And, like any organisation, there are situations where we have to share that information when it's related to somebody's safety or somebody else's safety. But that's always discussed with people that we're working with, so they know about that up front.
And we're at the 20th celebration, 20 years of the charity. It's doing fantastic work, but to run any charity costs quite a lot of money now.
Yes, it does. I work very closely with my funding and planning lead, Anne Connor, and we're a great double act, I think. So, but it is a constant element of our work. It's every week that we have to be considering not just, what funding we've got now and anticipating and putting in applications for the future, but also it's a huge amount of reporting. So we are very lucky to have statutory funding through the Police Crime Commissioner's Office, through the Ministry of Justice and through Northumberland County Council, which gives us a proportion of our funding. But the vast majority of our funding comes from a number of different grant funders. So up to around 15, probably beyond that now. So we're reporting on all of those as well. So a small charity like ours, at the minute we've got 11 staff. We've got 3 staff that are back office. It's a huge amount of work, to be doing that on a constant level.
So tell me, if people want to make contact with your service, how could they do that?
So if somebody is experiencing domestic abuse, then they call 01434 60 80 30, and they'll come straight through to speak to somebody directly. There's not a call centre or anything like that. And if somebody's interested in finding out about the service or is interested in supporting the service financially or sponsoring an element of our work, then if they contact admin@nda.services. And we're really interested in speaking to funders and sponsors.
Well, congratulations, Sharon, on 20 years of NDAS in Northumberland. And it's a real tribute, as you said in your speech this evening, to the women who originally set up this service 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That the service is still running. It's a great shame that it needs to run, but accepting that it does need to run, it's a real tribute to everybody, past and present, who's worked for the service.
Yeah, and I'm constantly aware that, I might be leading the organisation now. I've only been with NDAS for 18 months, but actually I'm following in the footsteps of lots of other women who have put in the hard work to make NDAS sustainable, which is a huge challenge, but also to develop the service to be delivering, what it's delivering now. And we're obviously getting it right, because between 60 and 70 of our referrals at any one time are self-referrals. So that, we're following in those footsteps, and I think it's fantastic to be able to celebrate that now.
Sharon, thank you very much for talking to Hexhamtv.
Thank you very much.